بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Assalamu alaikum guys once again. Today inshallah we are starting Naaqis. Finally, I want us to get done with this so that we can move on to things that are much easier inshallah. So before we begin Naaqis, you know how it goes. We do a story. I'm going to try. I tried to make this story as interesting as possible, because Naaqis is just intense and it's crazy. But anyway, let's see what we got. So, once upon a barbecue, long, long ago, somewhere in the deserts of Arabia, the Arabs were trying to figure out the rules of Naaqis, because by this point they were really tired and exhausted. They were stuck. They didn't know what to do because they were exhausted from all the previous rules, and they didn't know what to do with Naaqis. But guess what? Then a monkey came by their camp and it started making monkey sounds, which gives the Arabs a crazy idea. Okay, they would copy the monkey sounds and use them to create the rules of Naaqis. I'm not even kidding. Like, this Naaqis is just monkey sounds. That's what it is. It's a story of monkey sounds. And this is how Naaqis was born, out of pure madness and monkey sounds. Top secret information, by the way. The government hasn't released this yet. So if you ever ask an Arab, this never took place. This is a secret between us, how the Arabs talk to the monkey. So basically what happened is that, if you guys know, that game monkey see, monkey do. Yeah, except this was a case of monkey say, Arab say. That's what happened in the deserts of Arabia. In the jungle is monkey see, monkey do, but in the deserts it's monkey say, Arab say. That's basically Naaqis. And if you didn't know, Naaqis is an acronym for ناقش العرب قردا إلى الصباح. The Arabs talked or discussed with a monkey till morning. That's the acronym for Naaqis. I told you, this is top secret stuff. Like, nobody knows about this stuff except you and I. So I'm giving you some top secret stuff. Okay, so basically, how did that happen? So let's look at the story of monkey sounds and how the Arabs copied monkey sounds and put them in Naaqis rules. You're going to see how. So basically, the monkey came, and the Arabs were wondering, what are we going to do? What are we going to do with da'a? We have da'a, it's Naaqis, what are we going to do? Then the monkey says, ow. And then the Arabs were like, wait a second, that sounds like a good idea. Da'a, da'aw. So that's kind of like what happened. So the monkey says, ow. The Arab said, da'a, da'aw. Then the monkey came back and he was like, wa'u. And then the Arabs were like, oh yeah, sarwa, saru. That makes sense. Like, they just copied whatever the monkey was saying. So they were struggling with the endings. They didn't know what to do with the words at the endings. And then whatever the monkey said, that's basically what they did. So the monkey says, yeah, ooh. They were like, okay, fine. We'll take shaqiya, shaqu. And then they went to the mudari'. They were like, what are we going to do with the mudari'? We finished the madi. We have the monkey sounds, ow. That fits perfectly. Monkey came back again, was like, oh. We're like, okay, we got it. Fine. Yashqa, yashqaw. Done. Every time we see we're going to go with ow. That's what we're going to do. Then there was like, okay, what are we going to do with yahdi? What are we going to do with yahdi? And then the monkey was like, oo. Okay, they were like, okay, yahdi, yahduna. Fine, perfect. Works very well. So you see, they were actually kind of crazy. They just came up with this sounds. It was just madness. And then, of course, the last one was, what about yad'u? What are we going to do with yad'u? And they're like, okay, yad'u, fine. The monkey said, ooh. They went with yad'u, yad'una. And then the monkey was trying to trick them, you see. Because remember, we talked about disgusting sounds and how the Arabs don't like disgusting sounds. So the monkey was like, ew. The Arabs were like, nope, we're not doing that. Ew is not welcomed in the Arabic world. We're not going to take that sound. Strictly forbidden. No ew sound. So that's basically the short form of the conversation that happened in the desert. Now, what does this mean? I know it's crazy. I know you're wondering, what monkey sounds? What is this? So let's see what we actually mean by all that. Okay. So this is a table of what, if you understand this table, you understand Naaqis. That's it. It's a table that has the madi, and the mudari' and the amr. But if you understand the mudari', you basically understand the amr. So we're going to start with the madi because it's the easier one. So what about the madi? Okay, so there are two things you need to understand before we even get into Naaqis. How the letter ends in the huwa version or in the anta version determines how the letter is going to behave where the changes occur. That's something, I'm going to repeat that. How it ends in the huwa version or in the anta version, but in this case, let's focus on the huwa version first. How it ends in the huwa version is going to determine how it will behave. Okay, so that's really important. And there are two ways in the Madi, there are two ways how a Naaqis appears. Okay, so in the Madi, the huwa version can end with an alif, like in this case, you have an alif. So you have an example here, we have da'a, that is alif mamduda, the elevated alif, the long alif, da'a, or khala, or anything that ends like that, that's still an alif. Or you can have hada, for example, that is alif maqsura, or tagha, or zakka, or nada, all those they end with an alif. So if the madi, the huwa version, ends in an alif, there's a way we're going to deal with it. And if the madi ends with waw or a ya, there's a way we're going to deal with it. So that's the first thing you need to understand about Naaqis. There are two ways in which they're treated depending on how the huwa version ends. Okay, so if the huwa version ends with an alif, there's a treatment for it. If the huwa version ends with a ya or a waw, there's a way we're going to treat it. I need to, that needs to be in your mind. That needs to be very, very clear because that determines everything. Okay, now in the huwa version, you just need to worry about in the madi, you just need to worry about two things, because that's the only places where the change happens. Again, we're not going to look at everything else, because if everything else behaves normally, we're just going to look at where the irregularity happens. And in Naaqis, in the Madi, the irregularity happens in the hum version, the here version. These two in the Madi. And in the here version is basically, well, we'll see how it works. But this is where you need to look at it, in the huwa version and in the hum version, which means that in the other versions, you can just do it normally like you would do nasara, nasara, nasaru. It's supposed to be nasaru. So let's take an example. So we are expecting da'a to be da'awa and then da'awu. So that's what was going to happen here. Da'awu, right? But then the Arabs were like, nah, that's not good. You can't have wows like this. Doesn't look good. So they were like, okay, you know what? We're just going to drop this entire letter here. The weak letter just drops, it dies, and then you have a fatha before. It remains the way it is. You have da'aw. So that's what happened in the hum version. The weak letter died. The whole thing dropped. You have da'aw. The same thing with hada. So you had hada, like hada yahdi, daraba, daraba, darabu. It was supposed to be darabu. In other words, it was supposed to be hada woo. Again, this doesn't sound right. We're like, no, hada woo. This, no, they don't want this. So this whole thing just dropped. And now you have hada. See how they smoothed it out? Same thing with tagha. Tagha, taghawa, taghaw. Not taghawu, but taghaw. So if you understand that if there's an alif in the beginning, in the huwa version, there's an alif. So like da'a, we have da'aw. Da'a, da'awa, da'aw. Hada, hadaya, hadaw. Tagha, taghaya, taghaw. Zakka, zakkaya, zakkaw. Not zakkawu, but zakkaw. Not taghawu, but taghaw. Do you see how that kind of just smooths out? So that's the home version. That's what happened in the home version. The weak letter dies and you have a fatha there. In the here version, what happened is that you have two sukuns coming together. And we've talked about this rule where whenever you have two sukuns coming together, the weak letter dies. That's a rule everywhere. It applied in Ajwaf. We saw it a lot in Ajwaf. And now we are seeing it also here in Naaqis. So for example, let's take the first example. Da'at. So it was supposed to be nasarat. Here, nasarat, right? So it was supposed to be da'at. Da'a with that alif, t. So now you see the problem is here. Two sukuns have come together. The Arabs were like, nah, this is not good. We don't like two sukuns together. So they just told their weak letter, you know what, bye-bye, you're weak. We don't need you. So you have da'at. Hadat, it was supposed to be hadat. And they were like, nope, hadat. Zakat, nope, zakat. Okay, so that's basically what happened in the here version. Now that is as far as if the huwa version ends in an alif. It doesn't matter if it's the long alif or alif maqsura. It doesn't matter. As long as it's an alif, it's going to be treated like this. So whether it is Nasara family or Daraba family like we've seen, or whether it's even family 2 here like we've seen, it doesn't matter. And then one more important thing to know about Naaqis is that the big families, they all end in alif maqsura, which is fantastic, which makes it easier. Okay. The small families is where the issues, they're there, and we shall see more details about that. But yeah, so that's basically it. If you see an alif in the huwa version, the hum version, the weak letter is going to drop. So da'a, da'awa, da'aw, like that. Now what happens when you have waw or ya? Now I know this is, maybe one of this is new for you guys. Maybe you've never seen sarwa before, and this is probably new. This rarely happens. This is from the karuma family, and it rarely happens, but it exists. So you have a possibility of Naaqis having a waw at the end like that. So now what happens when you have a waw at the end like that, or you have a ya at the end like that? So again, there's a particular treatment that the Arabs use. Okay, so if you have a ya, like shaqiya, radiya, nasiya, or in this case, sarwa. So if you have the weak letter showing itself like this, because remember, alif is not a weak letter. Alif is just a symptom. Alif is representing either waw or ya in all irregularities. It is not an irregular, it's not a weak letter itself, it is representing a weak letter. But here, the weak letter itself is showing. You have a waw, you have a ya. So the Arabs were like, okay, fine, we're going to have a special rule for this category because now the weak letter is apparent. It's showing itself. So what do we have to be different? Cannot be like alif. Alif is pretending to be weak letter, but these are the real, genuine weak letters. So we have to do something different. So the Arabs are like, okay, fine. It was going to be, so saruwa, saruwa, saruwu, like karuma, karuma, karumu. So it was going to be like that, saruwu. So the wow, so like again, saruwu. This doesn't sound right. So they got rid of the weak letter, it died, and you had a dhamma before it. It's pretty easy, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So you just have to remember, in the hum version, the weak letter dies. Okay? And of course, whatever haraka that was before is going to be maintained. And same thing with here. Whatever haraka that was before is going to be maintained. Now, the tricky bit comes with shaqiya. The shaqiya is a kasra. But we are saying dhamma here. We are saying we're going to take a dhamma. How did that happen? Remember the monkeys story I told you? The monkeys tried to trick the Arabs and say ew. And the Arabs are like, no, we're not buying that. We're not taking ew. So this is exactly what happened with shaqiya. So it was shaqiya, like sami'a, then sami'a, then sami'u. It was supposed to be shaqiyu. Huh? And the Arabs are like, shaqiyu, ew? No, we don't want ew. So instead of shaqiyu, the Arabs are like, no, this doesn't sound right. Ew is not a good sound. So they were like, okay, fine. This dhamma is going to come here. We're going to get rid of this kasra, and then the weak letter is going to die. So we're going to have shaqu instead. So we have the dhamma. So that's what happens. You don't have to remember the mechanics of it. Just know if there's a ya ending, if it ends with ya, you're going to have u. If it ends with a, you're going to have o. That's how you just need to remember. A, ya, or a waw, you're going to have a dhamma. U. I hope that's clear so far. I know there's going to be a lot we're going to try and cover. So if there's any confusion or anything you feel like we need to stop and re-explain, we can do that. So that's basically what happens in the Madi. Okay? So you just remember, what is the huwa version of the Madi? Huwa version of the Madi ends in an alif. This is what I'm going to do. And the huwa version ends with a ya or ends with a waw. This is what I'm going to do. Okay? That's Madi. Now, Madi is separate. When you're doing the Sarf Kabir of Naaqis, Madi has its rules, Mudari' has its rules. And you have to keep these two words apart. Otherwise, you get so confused. Okay? So now we've done the word of Madi. Now we're moving to Mudari'. I need you to sort of like forget what I just did because we're studying something different. Okay? Mudari' is a bit different. Okay, so now we come to the Mudari'. Now with the Mudari', again, you have to ask yourself, how is the huwa version of the Mudari' ending? Because how it ends in the Mudari' is also going to determine how the irregularity behaves. Okay? And in this irregularity, mostly, it's the hum version. That's where you have a lot of problems. And maybe the anti version and the antunna version and hunna version. But it's not really a big deal. And we'll see how that happens. Okay, so let's start with, so in the Mudari', there are 3 ways in which the verb can end. 3 ways. Okay, so it can either end like with an alif maqsura like this. It can be طغى يطغى, like in fataha yaftahu family, or يسعى سعى يسعى. So this is ending with alif maqsura. So that's the first category in the Mudari'. It can end with alif maqsura. Or it can end with a ya. Okay? It can end with a ya, like hada yahdi. So yahdi, that's the part where it ends with a ya. Or yuzakki, yeah, ends with a ya. Or it can end with a waw, like yad'u, yarju, yakhlu. There's several of them. That yasmu, yeah, will end with a waw. Now, I separated the ya and the waw simply because it's different. It's waw, naqis wawi and naqis ya'i, but they behave the same. Okay, so when it ends with a ya and when it ends with a waw, same treatment. Same treatment. But I only separated them here because this one is naqis ya'i and this one is naqis wawi. That's the only reason I separated. But the treatment of it is going to be the same, and you will see. So in essence, it's only 2 categories, but just for, like I split them up like that. So you have to be careful. Does it end with an alif or does it end with a ya or a waw? If it ends with an alif, okay, so you have like yatgha, yas'a, yansa, this type of words. If it ends like this with an alif, what are you going to do with the hum? Again, the weak letter dies and you have a fatha. Just like here, when we said you have a fatha, the weak letter dies and you have a fatha. That's the same thing. You see, the rule is kind of the same. Like they were pretty consistent with the rules. So you have a, you have aw. Just like here, just like in the Madi, you had a, and then you have aw. The same thing applies. So whenever you see a ending, like ends with an alif, you're going to have aw. So for example, it was going to be يطغيان. So يطغى, يطغيان, يطغون. We expected يطغون. But then يطغون, again, same, problem we're having. يطغون. That was like يطغون. No, it doesn't sound right. So they got rid of the weak letter, and now you have يطغون. See that? That's what happened. Same thing with يسعى. يسعى, يسعيان, يسعون. So yes, it was going to be يسعون. And they were like, nope, يسعون doesn't sound right. So let's get rid of the weak letter. And now you have Yes, عونة. Simple, pretty straightforward. I have circled here, you can see the wow disappeared. There was supposed to be two wows, like يفتحون. So it was يفتحون. So the who, the فتحة, the يفعلون, so it's يفعلون. So the lam letter is the one that is dropping. You can actually see the lam letter dropping here because you have the ain letter, yas'a, and then wu, the lam letter just dropped. So that's what happens. The weak letter dies and then you retain whatever is remaining. So that's what happens in the home version when you have it ending in an alif maqsura. Same thing when it ends with the ya, just like we did in the madi. When it ends with the ya, the home version takes a dhamma, and we talked about ew sound. So the same thing, to evade the ew sound, to get away from the ew sound, the Arabs decided, you know what, dhamma, let's go dhamma. So the same thing happened. So hada yahdi. Yahdi, the huwa version is ending in ya. So huwa yahdi, huma yahdiyani. It was supposed to be whom? Yahdiyuna. Ugh. Sounds wrong. Yahdiyuna. Oh, like nope. So what we're gonna do is this dhamma is gonna go there, and then the ya is gonna disappear. So we have yahdu. Yahduna. That's kind of what happened there. Same thing with yarmuna. So rama yarmi, yarmiyani, yarmuna. Zakka yuzakki, yuzakkiyani, yuzakkuna, not yuzakkiyuna. Again, no ew sound. So that's the rule when it comes to when it ends with a ya. So what happens in the anti-version? Same thing in the anti-version. What you would end up with is double yas, and they don't like the doubling like that. Doubling of weak letters is not allowed. Okay. So for example, tahdina, it was supposed to be hada yahdi, which is not daraba yadribu, family. So we have to compare it with tadribuna. And tadribina, sorry, anti tadribina. So what we have is tad. Let me write that nicely. Tadribina. Tadribina. But then we ended up with tahdina. Why? Because it was supposed to be tahdiyina. 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 They were like, okay, so this double weak letters is not allowed. You can't have, like the same way we've been having two wows, we can't have two yas like that. So the weak letter, the one ya, goes away, and now you remain with tahdina. So that's basically what happened. Naaqis is not hard, right? I mean, we think it's very hard, but then when you actually understand the mechanics of it, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. You can't have two wows like that. You can't have two yas like that. Let's get rid of this one. Makes sense. We're like, okay, tahdina makes sense. Same with tarimina. You can't have tarimiyina. So anti tarimina. Anti tuzakkina. Same thing. That's what happens. Then you have the ones that end with a waw. So huwa yad'u. Da'a yad'u. Huwa yad'u. Huma yad'uani. Hum, it was supposed to be yad'uuna. Yad'uuna. And we talked about those wows coming together like that. We don't want that. So it becomes yad'una. The weak letter dies and you remain with the dhamma there. Yad'una. So you see the rules are the same. Really, the rules are the same. Same thing with anti-version. The weak ya goes away. So it was supposed to be like da'a yad'u is nasara yansuru. So it was supposed to be tansurina. Anti tansurina. So tad'iyina. It was supposed to be like that. Tad'iyina. Well, actually tad'uyina in this case, because this is nasara family. So tad'uyina. And they're like, nope, we're going to get rid of the weak letter, but the kasra stays. The kasra, because the kasra is for women, so the kasra stays. So that's kind of what happened there. So you have tad'ina. تسمينة. تسموينة. We. Again, we don't want that we sound. So تسموينة became تسمينة. ترجوينة. ترجوينة became ترجينة. Oh, sorry. This is wawi, not yeah. So this is تدعوينة. This was going to be تدعوينة, not تدعوينة. تدعوينة. Sorry. Same thing with تسمينة. It was going to be تسموينة. تسموينة. But then the wow and the ya like that. Again, two weak letters following each other. I think it's a no-no. They don't like that. So one weak letter dies. So you remain with تدعينة, تسمينة, ترجينة. So far, so good. We clear up to there? Okay, good. Now, just a few something to remember in Mudari' version. In the Mudari' version, the hum version and the hunna version exactly the same. So if you remember this, you know you won't be making a mistake. So when you come to the hum version, you're like, okay, so hum yad'una is the same as hunna. So I know when I come to the second line of here تدعو هما تدعواني هن same thing as hum يدعون. I go back to hum. So that's something you need to remember. The hum version and the hunna version is the same. The anti version and the antunna version now is the same. So when you come to the anti line, the first part of the line anti تدعينا and antunna تدعينا also. So once you figure that out, I think you basically understood mudara. And then you just remember the ending. If it ends with an a, the hum version is going to be aw. If it ends with a y or e, the hum version is going to be u. That's about it. It's going to be, that's mudara. Now we come to amr. Now amr. Now, if you understand mudara, there's really not much to understand about amr, but we can talk about amr as well. So with amr, there are only two categories. No, there are three categories. Why is it showing me? I don't understand. I don't know why it was showing me less, so I'm just switching to Excel here. Hopefully, yeah, so this one has more information. So we come to Amr. Now with Amr, we'll start with the three, how it ends. So you look at the anta version. How is the anta version ending? And that would tell you how the antum version will be and the anti version. Again, the only irregularities that happen is either the hum version or the anti version, or the antum version and the anti version. This is where you have to watch out. Hum and anti. Hum and anti. Of course, hunna sometimes behave like hum, like we've seen in the mudari', and also antunna, we've seen in the mudari', it behaves like anti. So these are some of the places that you need to just watch out for. But the others you conjugate normally. So when the anta version ends in a fatha, okay, so for example, itgha, is'a, insa. So when you figure out the mudari', like the mudari', for example, it's yet ghawna, you get rid of the of course this is the home version, so the huwa version is yet gha. If you get rid of the weak letter, you're remaining with yet gha. You get rid of the ya, then you have itgha. So you see, that's how you come up with the amr, with the huwa version. So you have itgha, or is'a, or insa. This is the first category. If it ends with a fatha, again, you're going to have a fatha. So the home version is not going to be itghu, it's going to be itghaw. So fatha, fatha. Alif, fatha. You see how that works? So here, if it is itgha, huwa itgha, huma itgha. Well, in this case, it depends if it's wawi or ya'i, but I think it's ya'i. Itghaya, antuma itghaya, sorry. Anta itgha, antuma itghaya, antum itghaw. Not itghu, itghaw. because it ended with a fatha. When it comes to the anti version, okay, so what you have is anti, it was going to be itghayi, like anti iftahi. So remember fataha yaftahu, iftah, iftahi. So it was going to be itghayi. But then they were like, no, the alif dies. So what you had is itghayi. I don't even know how you would read that. Itghayi. Then they were like, okay, so this sukun and sukun again came together. They didn't like that. So this weak letter died. And then you have itghayi. Itghayi. So that's kind of what happened there. Again, with a fatha, you have to have a fatha back to show that this is, fatha family. So the fatha has to be there. Itghayi. Is'a, is'ai. Insa, insay. That's the command for the anti version. And then in the antum version, the weak letter dies. Same thing that what we did. Oh, sorry, this is when it ends with, yeah. So basically that's the part where it ends with a fatha. Then you have to check where it ends with a kasra. So like ihdi, like idrib. This is the family daraba family. Idrib, irmi, same family. If it ends with a kasra, like here you can see ihdi, then the antum version is going to have a dhamma like before. Why? Because we don't want ew sound. Ihdiu, we don't want that. So because to eliminate ihdiu, we're going to say ihdu. Make it smooth, you're going to say ihdu. Same thing here with the anti version, it was going to be ihdiyi. Like idribi, ihdiyi. And we talked about those yas coming together like that, the weak one dies. So you can see here, there's the weak letter died. Okay, so you have fewer letters. Ihdi, not ihdiyi. And then the last part is where you have the anta version ends with a dhamma. So like ud'u, like unsur. Okay. Okay, no problem, Fauzia. You can catch the, or when you come back, you'll find us. Hopefully we haven't gone so far. So you have ud'u, urju. This is the unsur family. Nasara, yansuru, unsur. So when you have a dhamma, same thing with when you have a ya. You're gonna have ud'u. Yeah? Except, let's see what's happening. Except it's not gonna be like when you had a kasra, it's ihdi. Remember when we formed the command, the helper alif gets a kasra. If the second last letter has a kasra, you get that. But if you have a dhamma, you're gonna have a dhamma, and that's why it is ud'u. So huwa ud'u, huma sorry, anta ud'u, antuma ud'u, wa antum ud'u, not ud'u, antum ud'u. Same thing with urju, usmu, and zuku. So this is second family, and also all the big families basically would take the same ruling like this one. So antum, zuku. Then when you have it ending with dhamma, and it's the anti version, okay? So this one is going to be id'i, because now we have a kasra. The helper alif is going to have a kasra, okay? So anti, id'i, not udu'i. You can't say that. So anti, id'i, anti ismi, anti irji. Now, the last thing about amr is that, of course, mazid fihi commands based on the container of the family. Like aslama, alqa, it was supposed to be alqa, yeah, but then they were like, no, alqa, yeah, doesn't sound right. Alqa. So alqa, yulqi, that's why there's a kasra here, because yulqi, and then you make it into an amr, it becomes alqi. Anti aslim, sorry, anta aslim, alqi. Or nada, this is the jahada family. Jahid became nadi. Or zakki. Allim, zakki. So that's basically the introduction to Naaqis. Okay. So we're going to go back to our table or back to our notes. And we're going to go now into some extra details into Naaqis. That's the background information. That's the story you need to understand. So you just need to remember these sounds. A, aw. In the home version. The Hua version is going to be a, like da'a, like hada. And what you're going to end up with is going to end up with da'aw, hadaw. Okay. If you have ending with a wa or a ya, what you're going to have is u sound. The mudari', same thing, except the mudari' you have e, yahdi, for example, yuzakki, for example, and then the hum version is going to have u instead. So this is important. And of course, try and avoid eu sound as much as possible. And remember, when two sukuns meet, the weak letter dies. Those are the basic rules for Naaqis. If you understand those rules very well, Naaqis will become very, very easy. But now let's take a look at some details. Because yeah, it's Naaqis. It's going to blow your mind. Honestly, the amount of information in Naaqis is a lot. So we've covered the basics. If you just know the basics, you're good. But it's also important to know the details of other stuff. So we already mentioned, we talked about that. We talked about how it ends. It's important to know how it ends. If it ends with an alif, there's a treatment for it. If it ends with a waw or a ya, there's a treatment for it. Okay? So just remember that. And the thing that makes Naaqis crazy is that it happens in every single family member of every family. Like it happens everywhere. Okay? So it's not something you can avoid. So you just have to know how to navigate it, basically. And we're going to see how. So let's look at some of the rules. We know them ladies. You know what them ladies do and what they keep doing, you know. Them ladies are always causing trouble in the Madi. And, you know, in this case, the weak letter actually comes back, which is crazy. Because normally, it's usually somebody dies or something. But yeah, we'll see how that happens in details. And we talked about how the weak letter dies and in several different places how the weak letter dies. Okay. We're going to start with Mazid Fihi, big families, because big families is always easier than small families. Small families have more details and more complications. Big families are always easy to understand. And you can see, I've tried to summarize it here in this table. You can see Naaqis happens every single family, except of course family 9. And we know family 9 only exists in one irregularity. That's muda'af, ihmarra, yahmarru. Only there's doubling in the last letter. So that's the only place where family 9 exists. But you can see with Naaqis, it's everywhere. Okay. There's no escaping Naaqis. You just have to know Naaqis. Okay. That's important. So we're going to look at, so I'm going to summarize this table first, and then we can go ahead. So we talked about the two kinds of Naaqis. Naaqis wawi, Naaqis ya'i. By the way, if you guys have any questions whatsoever, you know, just interject, stop me, ask, or whatever. So we have Naaqis wawi and Naaqis ya'i. I'm going to skip family 1 here. We're going to go to family 2. So you can see there's a Naaqis wawi and a Naaqis ya'i. But when you look at this table here in the Mazid Fihi, what you see is that they all end with alif maqsura. Whether it's ya'i, whether it's wawi, whether it's ya'i, whether it's wawi, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's which family or whichever family, all ends in alif maqsura, which makes our life easy, which means that the Madi is always going to be treated in one way because the Hua version is always ending in alif. This is so easy. So we know the rule that the home version, if it ends with an alif, the home version is going to have fatha. So it's going to be najaw, zakkaw, nadaw, radaw. You know, it's going to be that easy. It's going to be just a walk in the park like that. That's the rule is going to apply in the Mazid Fihi. So that's pretty straightforward. But when you come to family 1 here, and this crazy part over here. Now this is where you have Naaqis wawi. There are two kinds of Naaqis wawi. So it can either be nasara yansuru and nasara yansuru always ends with an alif. So you can see there, nasara yansuru ends with an alif because it was supposed to be da'awa. Then they decided, you know what, the waw is going to be replaced by an alif. So that's what's going to happen. But then you have karuma also, which rarely happens. I'm just telling you so that you know, if you, so when you come across something like this, you know, like, what is this? We never learned about this. Yeah, it exists. So there's karuma, and the example I could find is sarwa. Okay, so this is the example, and you can see the waw actually coming back. The waw is not hiding here in this case. And then you have Naaqis ya'i. And here you have, if it's daraba family, we've memorized hada yahdi. If it's sami'a family, we've memorized shaqiya yashqa. I think this is the one that Ustad taught in class. But if you memorized maybe radiya yarda, it's the same thing. So you have shaqiya and radiya. And then also I think Ustad taught tagha yatgha. This is the fataha family. This way you have fatha in the madi and also fatha in the mudara. And we also talked about how if it ends with a fatha, what's going to happen in the hum version and in the anti version. We already covered that. So this is just what you need to know. You need to ask yourself, which family, when it's family one, which family is it? How does it end? If it's fataha, I know it ends with a fatha, with an alif, sorry. So I know how I'm going to deal with the hum version, because that's where the irregularity happens. Okay. So that's basically the summary of that table. Is that table clear, guys? Okay. So when you're silent, I know you don't have any questions. So that's good. Okay. So here, let's look at now Sarf Saghir, some of the big families of the Mazid Fi. Naaqis, Wawi, and Ya'i behave the same. Like we said, they're consistent, which is great, because if it's something that's going to apply everywhere, at least let it be consistent. Let it be the same. So whether it's Naaqis Wawi or Naaqis Ya'i, we've seen that if it ends with an alif maqsura, you're going to have O in the home version. If it ends with E, like or like shaqiya yashqa, if it's shaqiya, if it ends with a ya, we know we're going to have U in the home version. Okay. So in the Mazid Fihi, like we've said, number one thing, all of them end with alif maqsura. Now, that's in the Madi. But in the Mudari', all of them end with E. All of them ends with E except the Fatha families. The Fatha families are family 5 and 6. This is the Ta'allama family and the Tasa'ala family. So you can even see when I write them. Tasa'ala. Tasa'ala. Ta'allama. Ta'allama. So you can see fathas everywhere. So these are called fatha families. The fact that they have fathas everywhere, they were like, how can we have ya? Ya doesn't get along with a fatha. What gets along with a fatha? An alif. So they're like, you know what? We want an alif instead. We don't want a ya. We cannot get along with a ya because we're fatha everywhere. It only makes sense you give us an alif. So that's why it is not yatazakki or yatazakki, because now it's a fatha family, because you can't say yatazak. So it's not yatazakki or yataradi, it's yatazakka, yatarada. So they smooth that out there. So this is a very important thing to remember, and a very important rule to remember in the mudari'. So everything else has a ya. Yusammi, yunadi, yulqi. You can see all ends with a ya except these two families. يتزكى, يتراضى. Then the other thing to remember is that the isim fa'il ends in a tanween, ends in a double kasratain. Okay, so ends in like that. So musammin, munadin, mulqin. That's going to be the isim fa'il. So when you see an isim fa'il that looks like this, you're wondering, what is this? Is this a dharf? Is this a small family? What is this? It's an isim fa'il from the Naaqis, big families. Okay, and then the isim maf'ul ends in an alif. ends in an alif. So here you have مسمٍ, اسم مفعول, you're going to have مسمًا. Okay, see that? And here you have مناد, here you're going to have منادا. Here you have ملق, here you have ملقا. So that's the difference between اسم فاعل and اسم مفعول. Again, you know, اسم فاعل you have a kasra and اسم مفعول you have a fatha, but here the kasra is represented by two kasratains, because you can imagine like this. Let me simplify. You can imagine that one kasra is the kasra that is required, and the other kasra is basically replacing the weak letter that was removed, because the weak letter is supposed to be maybe mulqiyun, like iyun. We don't like that. So that extra kasra, it has replaced whatever was omitted. Same thing here, munadan. So you can assume, like, whatever was missing, so it was supposed to be muslimun, muslamun, mulqayun. Like mulqayun, ayun. No, mulqan is fine. So they got rid of whatever was making it weird, and they replaced it with tanween. Okay. The other thing we need to know is the masdar. How does the masdar change? So the masdar changes in 3 ways that you need to know. Family 3, family 4, family 7, family 8, family 10. Majority of the big families, let's say. So majority, so let's just even think about like this. All of them end in alif and hamza like that, except these ones. I think it would be easier to understand it like that. So all of them, they're going to end like that. So, and in family 3, we know there are 2 masdars. So one masdar ends like this, and another masdar ends with a ta marbuta. So that's something to know about. So for example, if you're memorizing nada, yunadi, nida'an. So the masdar ends with a nida'an. And the second masdar, munadatan. So the second masdar ends with ta marbuta. The first masdar ends with hamza. Okay. So that's something to know there. Now, masdar of family 2, this is the ta'allama family, ends also with ta marbuta. So these 2, they end with a ta marbuta. Tasmiyatan. So samma, yusammi, it was supposed to be ta'liman, tasmiyan, no, ta'liman, how is it going to be? Tasmi, yeah, basically it was like 2 double yas. And then they were like, no, get rid of 1 ya, put a ta marbuta instead. So that's why you have tasmiyatan. Because ta'liman, there's a ya in the pattern. Ta'liman, there's already a ya. So you add another one, then you have ta'yiyan. And then they were like, ta'yiyan, what is this? Ta'yiyan doesn't sound right. So they got rid of the weak one. And they were like, put a ta marbuta instead. So now you have tasmiyatan. Then family 5 and family 6. So this is ta'allama and tasa'ala. Ta'allama and tasa'ala. Again, the fatha families behaving differently. Because they're like, okay, so what are we going to do with the masdar? They were like, you know what? Makes the masdar the same as isim fa'il. Put a tanween on it, a kasratain on it. So now you have a similarity between the isim fa'il of family 5 and 6 of the ta'allama family and the tasa'ala family being the same as the masdar. Tazakkin, taradin. So when you see this word, it could either be a masdar or it could be an isim fa'il. A lot of rules today, guys. A lot of rules. Okay? But yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop there. I don't want to get into Sarf Kabir because there's quite a bit to cover in the Sarf Kabir. And we are almost at time. And I know we've covered quite a lot already. I just want that to sink in for today. And then tomorrow, inshallah, we'll start from Sarf Kabir. Look at the rules in Sarf Kabir. Look at the Muslimatun chat, how they are affected. The Muslimatun chat as well, the feminine chat and the masculine chat. You know, and how the Amr and the Nahi also, they affected. And if we have some time, we will go into مجرد صرف صغير as well. Okay. Any questions so far? I know I've given you a lot. There's a lot you need to think about. Probably even question your life choices about Arabic. But yeah, that is Naaqis. Have I simplified something for you? Because that's the most important thing. I hope like something, you learned something new or something was simplified for you today.
It's oversimplified. Thank you. It was very complicated, but I think there's too many rules. We just have to memorize the rules, or I think we learn as we do more vocabulary.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing is, it's just a lot. It's not that it's complicated, it's a lot.
Yeah.
That's what makes it crazy. Yeah, I think with practice and it helps to memorize, like the families Ustad taught us, da'a, hada, shaqiya, taqa. If you can be able to just memorize these ones, then they will act as a backup plan. So when you encounter a new word, you try and relate, okay, is it hada, is it da'a, and how did we memorize it? It can help.
Inshallah.
Fantastic. I don't know if there's any other questions or clarifications or comments, because I think we can end there today. All right. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم guys.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.